Sunday is Christopher Street Liberation Day, the 18th anniversary of the Stonewall Rebellion. We'll talk with a man who was there outside the Stonewall Inn in Sheridan Square in June of 1969 and see how far we've come and where we're going. Good evening, I'm Andy Humm, and this is the Gay Week in Review. Tonight we'll talk about Lesbian and Gay Pride Day and more with our panelists Jim Levin and Jean Elizabeth Glass, both of whom are newly elected spokespersons of the Coalition for Lesbian and Gay Rights. And joining us for tonight's program, our producer, Lou Maletta, a veteran of the Stonewall. First, this news note. Ron Reagan Jr. is the narrator of an upcoming AIDS documentary aimed at heterosexuals. In a public service announcement accompanying the documentary, Ron says that the federal government is not doing enough to stop the spread of AIDS, and adds that if you agree, you should write your congressman, or to someone higher up, he says with a smile. Ron holds up a condom in the film, but doesn't demonstrate how to use it. And this is the New York Times. Now, it's not a remarkable edition of the New York Times, but it happens to be the first day that a new policy is in existence. The Times has decided to use the word gay. Applause? Yay! We thought it was... They just decided to use Ms. a couple of weeks ago, so we thought it was going to take another 15 years for them to get to gay. All right, enough about people of indeterminate sexual orientation like the president's son. Let's talk about lesbian and gay pride. Lou Maletta, why were you in the Village on the night of the Stonewall?
Well, I was around with some friends of mine. We were walking down Christopher Street when all of a sudden the police cars started coming, and people were pushing each other out of the Stonewall. And there was a great commotion that was going on. I didn't understand what was happening until we saw the police coming down the street with their sticks drawn, their nightsticks drawn, and they were just pushing people out of the way. So we ran into a vestibule. It was just like 2 or 3 doors down from the Stonewall with a couple of other people who had just left the Stonewall. And we were asking what was all happening, and they said, well, we finally had enough of the harassment that was going on and decided to fight back. And I thought it was great because every time that we went into a gay bar, you always felt this... like it was the Big Brother watching. Everything that you did was always circumspect. You tried to hide. People touching. People stopped dancing the minute there was any indication that there were people around that may arrest you. And you were arrested for something.
So what did that prompt you to do that night? Did it prompt you to join right in, or were you a spectator?
Oh, yeah. I was.
What did you do, Lou?
Well, we stopped the bus from coming down the street.
Bus of cops?
No, there was a bus. The bus was, I forgot which bus it was, but the bus on the street couldn't get through, so there was a whole bunch of people in front of the bus and blocked all the traffic. The police finally gave up at a certain point because there weren't enough of them. There were just so many people out in the street that they gave up trying to do anything about it, and these cars were beeping and trying to get through, and everybody was just pushing the cars and rocking them and stopping, just generally disrupting traffic, both on Christopher Street and on 7th Avenue.
You make it sound like there was a real change of consciousness right then and there, that people have been walking around with this anger.
Well, it was mostly the people from Stonewall, and there were a lot of gay people that just joined in from the streets.
Did you know other people who ran the other way when they saw that? I often hear the story about David Rothenberg saying, I watched from my window, but I was afraid to go down there.
I didn't know of anybody else that had run away from the event. As I said, we just came upon it. There was 2 other people with me, and we just came upon it and saw it and thought it was a great idea. It was finally fighting back. The 60s were very rebellious times. It was a time that people were standing up for their rights and their opinions. And they did something about it. Certainly, Vietnam was right there. And this was the time that I thought it was a great time for us to make a statement that gay is good, that there is nothing to be ashamed of, that we should be out, that there is no reason that one man can't touch another man dancing, and that another woman and a woman and a woman can't go and dance. And I thought it was a great thing to happen.
Do you have any questions for this veteran?
Well, I was just thinking, not a question, a comment. There were people who are younger may not remember what it was like to go to a gay bar in the 60s, which I think people did with an extraordinary amount of trepidation. Bars always were dark on the outside in some kind of way so people couldn't see, and they never had names. And Stonewall was, a matter of fact, in a more populated area of the city than most bars were likely to be, except there were a few bars sometime uptown which were shirt and tie bars that people went to. But there were relatively few bars open in the city. It was a very special thing to go to a bar. It was a big step. And so you have to put that in the context of what it was like to be in a gay bar at that time. You were somewhat out, in a way, in the gay community if you went to a bar. There were lots of people who would have considered themselves out as gay and had sex and identified themselves that way, but they wouldn't go in as public a place as a bar. So move to the streets is a big thing at that time.
Well, what were you all doing in 1969? I was just an anxious queer in high school in Long Island, not doing anything about it except, and I don't even remember the newspaper accounts at the time because they were probably buried someplace on page B20
Really?
on the time. They weren't in front page news. Where were you, Lou?
I had just moved into the city. I just moved over from Brooklyn. From
Brooklyn.
All the way in
that's
from
part
Brooklyn.
of the
That's a big... Well, actually, New York City is different from Brooklyn. As it is from any other place in the world. But I had just moved into 10th Street and 2nd Avenue.
To get really more in the center of gay life?
Right.
Okay. How about you, Jean Elizabeth?
I was only 3, Andy.
3 years old?
I was 3. Actually, no, I was 2.5.
Girl.
To be precise about it.
And your consciousness was...
I really don't recall having any opinion one way or the other about Stonewall at the time, actually.
How about Jim, where were you in 1969?
I was a college professor at that time at City College, a member of was a lawyer, but I didn't practice at that point. Although I can still remember that because people knew I was a lawyer, and there were arrests in the bars occasionally, there were still plainclothes police there that took people home. People would always come up and ask me questions about that.